Yeah, fuck you, Craig.
I'm putting that in here.
Go for it.
All right, everyone. We are back here with the Bouncing Back podcast. We're sorry we missed y'all last week. We had a lot going on. We were going to try to squeeze in last weekend, but I ended up going out of town and purchasing a car, so we didn't have the opportunity to do so. But hey, we're back here on the mics today. We got a lot to talk about for you all. So let's go ahead and kick it off. What is up, Jack? How are you doing?
I'm good, Wesley. Another day, another dollar. Had a little late night at work here, so we're actually getting to this a little later than I think Wes would probably hope. Because you got to understand, for people who don't know Wes, that guy is a timely man. He probably sets an alarm at 8 p.m. every night to go to bed. And you best believe at 4 a.m. he wakes up and makes his coffee and reads the newspaper and eats his eggs and so that's Wesley. So trying to work on something like a podcast with someone as myself has got to be difficult for him. But nonetheless, not too bad. Everything's nice. It's starting to cool down a little bit, which I personally am a fan of. I know most people are not, but I like it. And so just getting used to the winter weather and ready for what we got ahead of us, especially as far as sports and everything like that. But that being said, I was thinking driving home from work today. It was, I don't know, it was probably right around 7 o'clock, maybe a little before. And I was just thinking, I was like, man, it's so late. I can't believe I'm getting so home. And then probably with the mind that we were going to record the podcast tonight. I started thinking about the fact that, we used to be out 3, 4. I mean, there were times I didn't get home till 5 a.m. out of Morgantown. Do you remember those nights?
Oh yeah, I remember. We used to hang out at Starport after work, and Nick Kelly would just keep us there for hours waiting to count the money when he just wanted to shoot pool. You and him would just shoot pool. You remember those days?
Oh, so dude, I worked at a bar in Morgantown, downtown Morgantown, not too long. It's where I did a majority of my bartending. But it was at Starport, like Wesley mentioned, and it was a barcade, they called it. And so it was filled with arcade games. Nick Kelly, who actually owned one of the bars I worked at previously, um, he then stepped in as a GM position at the Starport, the Barcade, and so we got into it. You probably know by now, and people who know me well know that I talk shit on everything I do. Competition is everything, and so being in an arcade where there's potential competition ahead of you, that's all we did. If I wasn't serving a drink, I was talking shit to Nick. So we used to play pool. We used to play the racing games, pinball. We got into pinball for a little bit, which I'll tell you, we'll get into it on one of these podcasts. I don't think anybody in the world other than the pinball community knows how big the pinball community is, because it is enormous.
Yep.
Absolutely enormous. But nonetheless, late nights, no doubt, especially when we were working. And it was always nice, with Starport being able to do things like play pool at the end of the night while, money's getting counted and stuff, because some of those places like Bent's, um, Lux, any of those places, we were sitting there just drinking beer, waiting, clock's ticking. Um, but speaking about some of those nights, long nights at work, you got any good ones? I think we owe the people a couple good stories. I was thinking about this. I listened to the first 2 episodes. We had, I love listening to myself talk, but I felt like we needed a little more us in there. So Wesley, why don't you do me a favor? Uh, give us some background into the bouncing life. When you were bouncing, let's say Lux. You
Okay.
got any good stories? Any good ideas? Anything you want to share with the peoples? To let them know what kind of work environment we were at
Yep.
2, 3 in the morning.
Yep. I can do that, man. I mean, I tell you what, we had a lot of good times at Lux, a couple wild times. You saw something new every day, but you kind of threw this at me about 5 minutes before the show, and I was thinking back. I was like, hey, what is one of the craziest stories I have from when I was working at Lux? It really comes back to one Saturday night, and I can't remember when it was relative to my time there. I know I was working inside at the time, bouncing. And usually, if anyone's been to Lux, on Saturday nights, it can get a little wild. It gets tight in there. They're playing some good music, and you
Wild.
see.
Hold on. There are some nights where I'm not exaggerating. It is not safe, or it was not safe to be in
Yep,
locks.
yep.
But go on. Sorry.
Yeah, but usually a lot of fights. But usually it's just, I don't know, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 2-on-1, just small fights. And even though you had some really big guys come in there, for the most part, we were able to break it up if that ever came up, and just kind of get taken care of. But this particular night, we had the Fairmont State University football team actually in there all
Oh
together
Lord. And if you
down on.
know, if you spent time in Morgantown, you know that altercations. I don't want to say altercations, but interactions with people from Fairmont
Yep.
probably don't go the best most of the time. Just kind of notating that because I don't know what it is, but they drive 30 minutes up the road and they just have some interesting things to say and do. So I just
Yep.
thought it was funny to mention that because Fairmont, I don't know, man.
Yep.
Interesting people I've met from Fairmont, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely. And at this time, I know I was working. I believe I was working the bottle service area upstairs. So you can kind of, if you've ever been there, it's kind of just this balcony area where you can kind of overlook the rest of the dance floor. And I mean, it's packed shoulder to shoulder. And you notice like something was going on. So even though you can't really see a whole lot, you start to see some like commotion going on in the corner, around where these Fairmont State football players were at, and a little bit of confrontation starts to pick up. So we start to kind of gather around, just making sure everything's good to go. And then all of a sudden, you see the first punch thrown. And these Fairmont State guys got in a fight with this other group of guys. It was probably, I don't know, 10 on 10 roughly is where we were at.
Uh,
And these were big dudes. I mean, these were football players. And they just start brawling. And I mean, we probably only had 15 bouncers in the whole bar. I mean, all hands on deck. We just go down there and we're just doing our best to try to contain this. Where we got 20 people fighting. I remember just grabbing people behind the shoulders and basically just shoulder tossing them on the floor, turning around, grabbing the necks. And this just goes on for like 5 to 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, I stand up, and I remember this to this day very visually. I stand up, turn around to go find, okay, who's next? And I make eye contact with my manager while he's holding a can of pepper spray and shoots it straight across my eyes. I mean, it was like slow motion. You just see it
oh
come
no.
straight directly into my eyes. And this isn't just like some pepper spray these little white bitches walk around with. I mean, this is a canister that's actually shooting projectile is shooting this, probably 10 yards forward. Hits me straight across the eyes. And I just remember basically this is all going on. It's chaos. And I like slip down into the basement because I can't see anything. Like I'm just like scattering around. So I slide down into the door.
As if it's
Um,
not hard enough to see in Lux to begin with.
yeah, yeah. But at this point, I'm just trying not to get hurt. Like I can't defend myself. So I just duck down into the basement. And man, I couldn't see anything. So myself and the guy, one of my good friends from Morgantown, Javier, he got the brunt of it as well. Shot straight in the eyes, and I just remember him and I walking down the road to the Sheets just to get a gallon of milk to rub in our eyes in the parking lot.
Yep.
I couldn't see for days, man. It was the worst thing I've experienced, probably to date, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, dude, some of those nights, bouncing, because the thing about bouncing, it's a obviously, I'm sure anybody can put this together. It's a very physical job. So there are a lot of nights where you go home with bumps and bruises. You wake up and your arm sore, your shoulder sore, things like that. But I have to honestly say, and I want to get into one of my experiences here in a sec that will kind of put some perspective into kind of how damaged up you can get. But um, I think pepper spray was the one thing I never wanted to see.
Yep.
Like not obviously I don't want to see getting in a fight. I don't want to be in physical altercations or have to physically remove people at all. And in fact, I'm really glad I ended up getting out of bouncing because it was so aggressive like that. Um but yeah, pepper spray is just it gets you in a way that I don't think it's almost like getting kicked in the nuts. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like
Yep.
it's really painful, but it stops you. And I obviously that's why pepper spray is so effective. but man, pepper spray is the worst. And it's funny you bring up pepper spray. I have a couple pepper spray stories real quick. One thing about Bent Willie's, they were kind of the first to really do that outside patio area in downtown. I don't know if first, or I would say probably the biggest, I think is the better way to put it. The biggest outdoor kind of drinking and dance floor. And so there were times where there would be fights out on the street because you look down from the patio at Ben Willie's and you're looking down into downtown Morgantown. You know what I mean? And it's
Yep.
only on the second story, so it's not like you're too far away. So a big fight breaks out and police come and spray out that pepper spray. If you're on that patio, you're kind of fucked. Which is funny to think about because you don't really think about pepper spray in that perspective. And honestly, most times when pepper spray is getting put out there, it's not at that quantity. But those bigger altercations where they would just lay down just almost like a layer of fog.
Yeah.
And if you were anywhere in that vicinity, including out on the dance outside patio at Ben's, you were in for trouble. And the other one I wanted to touch on real quick is I remember the head security manager. I don't know exactly what his title was Dave, though. You remember Big Dave?
Yep. I remember Dave.
Yeah, awesome guy, but he he had a specific pepper spray that he used that had a delay on it, at a 30-second delay, which I always thought was stupid because I thought where pepper spray was effective was you spray it on and it just, like I said, it freezes people. But he had this pepper spray that had this, I want to say 20-30 second delay. And there was this guy, it was a really slow night. We were out front. And this guy was way too drunk and he just kept coming in. And think about someone like Dave who had worked in that field for so long, and he was massive. I mean, that guy, you looked at him, you would think he's like an NFL offensive lineman. I mean, huge guy. And he really has to be careful with how he approached people, especially people who were smaller. And in a college town, if you're that big, you can't, not that I'm saying he wanted to, but this kid who was probably, 160 pounds, 5'10", 160 pounds, Dave in his position can't really put a hand on that guy. I mean, he can obviously, but if it gets to a point where that kid hurts himself, it could be put on Dave. And we were protected to a certain point, but it just, no one wants to get in that legal battle. So he carried around this pepper spray. And I remember this kid because I was out front with Dave at the door. And this kid was so drunk and he was trying to just somehow push his way through Dave. And Dave was like, "This isn't going to work, man. Like, you need to leave." The kid tried to swing on Dave, which terrible mistake. Dave extends his arm, pushes the kid, arm's distance away, and coats him with this pepper spray. This kid doesn't realize what happens to him. So he takes 2 steps back and he's staring. He goes, "What was that?" And then no one says anything. 5 seconds later, this kid is on his knees downtown Morgantown screaming and crying. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the most awful thing. But yeah, pepper spray, man, a force to be reckoned with. I would stay away from it.
Yep.
I would never even carry pepper spray or recommend someone to carry pepper spray because even if you're in a circumstance where you feel that's needed, you're gonna screw yourself over. You'll
You're
get a
gonna spray
taser or
yourself. Yep.
something. Like, I don't know what you gotta get, but pepper spray, man, keep me away from that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what about you, Jack? I know what crazy stories you got from your days working down the bars.
Yeah,
Anything
so
stands out?
I do. I have one in particular. I'm going to be really careful with this story. Um, I'm trying to. There are actually, I believe, current legal proceedings surrounding this event. So I don't want to incriminate anything or say anything I'm not supposed to. But nonetheless, it actually was a night I was off. Now that I think about this, but it was at Bent Willie's, and I believe this was, I don't know, it was one of my birthdays, and we were out on the outside patio. I was with Amber, and then a group of friends. Were you there? I don't even remember
I
if you
was
were there.
not there that night. Nope.
Okay. You know what? I think you were actually home in Parkersburg because it was all my birthday. So this was August 4th.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I would not have
there's
been in town.
yeah, probably
Uh,
were back at home. Um, but yeah, so great birthday. I mean, what a time. I mean, working at a club and then going to that club on your birthday and getting the perks. I mean, you can imagine it was a great night out. And at the end of the night, obviously drank a little too much, everything like that. And I wanted to go say goodbye to the DJ. It was Yemi that night. And
Yep.
if you've been in downtown Morgantown for an extended period of time, you know who DJ Yemi is. And he had called me out a couple times, so I just wanted to, go thank him and say goodnight. So I'm like, me, I have Amber's hand. We're squeezing through because it would get packed. I mean, if you were
Yep.
outside on a summer night at Bent Willie's, I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder, no exaggeration. So I'm like squeezing through. We get to the DJ, we say our goodbyes, whatever. I'm walking back through the crowd, and of course, someone decides to um, touch Amber inappropriately. Okay. So I didn't actually see this happen because I was walking. I had Amber was behind me holding my hand, and I was kind of guiding, kind of parting the way through the crowd. And so we got a couple steps up, and she kind of yanked me back, and she said, "Hey, this is what just happened." And I said, "Who?" And she turned around and she pointed to the guy. And I took her from behind me. I pulled her in front of me, and I kind of just pushed her forward. I said, "Get out of here."
Yep.
Terrible. This is such a bad night. And honestly, this story right here is why bouncers have a job. This is why, it's important that they're there. But nonetheless, so I turn around, I go confront the kid. Of course, that kid is not alone, right? He's with a big group of people. And but at that time, that wasn't going to be something that stopped me from being upset. I was obviously upset. Had some drinks in me. It was my birthday. I was having such a great time, and I was at a place that I knew so well. So for something to happen to my girlfriend, you just can't let that slide. So we got into it. We started arguing, and next thing you know, punches started getting thrown, and it was wild. I mean, it must have been, you know, 4 or 5 people wailing on me for probably 10, 15
Oh
seconds.
man.
I was just getting my ass rocked. And then, finally, because another thing about working as at a nightclub or at a bar or anything like that is the regulars, right? You know the people that are in there, and oddly enough, there's a lot of regulars at each nightclub, right? So when
Yep.
I go into a night at Ben Willie's when I was working, it almost felt like a social event because so many people who comes through those doors, and obviously you're out at the clubs, but then some people who know me stepped in. So things started going back and forth. The bouncers obviously got involved, who were very close friends of mine and coworkers. So they're all pulling people off. Well, the kid who had touched Amber inappropriately, in the chaos of this, and I feel like I remember this happening, but I was able to watch this whole event unfold on film, so I could see a little more of it. But basically, he took a step back, reached down into his waistband, pulled out a gun, and he shot off 6 rounds. Right, and so
Yep.
if you're in a nightclub and a gun goes off, it's chaotic. But I got a lot of shit this night, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm not saying I did something wrong because when those shots started going off, you can see myself running through this crowd like my life depended on it. I mean, I was, and this is terrible. I'm supposed to be a bouncer at this nightclub.
Yep.
I was dodging behind other people. I had
Oh
no
no.
idea. I just started a fight with this guy, and this guy pulled out a gun. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm under the impression that I'm getting shot at. So
Yep.
I'm dodging behind other people. Not saying that their lives are any less valuable than mine, but we've had a few, and we're doing whatever we need to get out of there. So,
Dude, that is
uh,
crazy.
it was a crazy night, and I ended up dislocating my shoulder that night and breaking my hand, which really sucked. And I also woke up with a mean black eye.
Yeah.
So although it's not necessarily a bouncing story, it's a story that I mean, those bouncers were working that night. There were
Yeah.
guys who ran up to that kid, tackled him, and held him down uh, with a gun next to him.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy stuff. So while bouncing was fun, we had a lot of fun. It was a serious gig, man. We did some serious stuff. There was some big things that broke out. I'm glad that neither of us got seriously injured, but
Mhm.
we did have a lot of fun. And the other thing about bouncing, and I want to make sure I hit this, and I know I've said it a couple times, um, but that's not all it was. It's not like we went into work that night and we were fighting. I mean, we
Yeah.
were fighting, but that wasn't why we were there. There was a lot more that we did, and like I said, a lot of people there. You're out with people. You're having a good time while you're working. You're able to talk to a wide variety of people. And I thought it was interesting what you said about the Fairmont football team because I always thought that was the coolest thing about working in the nightlife is because while sometimes it was not the most fun, it was cool working with different groups of people. I mean, I worked with old WVU football players, current WVU football players, basketball players. I served a water to Javon Carter, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. I don't know why a guy wouldn't trade. I asked if he wanted anything, and his manager stepped in and said he'll take a water. So I don't.
Damn.
But nonetheless, I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff that we did. So
Yeah.
Bounty was a good time, but man, we have some stories, and I'm excited to kind of unfold more stories as we get deeper into this podcast and really hit and bounce back on some of these crazy nights that we looked at working. But outside of fighting, I mean, can you think of anything? As far as I don't know, maybe famous people or cool people, big people at the university. Obviously, Gordon Gee made his fair share of presence. And for people who don't know, Gordon Gee is the president. Is he still the president, Wes?
Yeah, he's still the president.
Okay, so he's the president of West Virginia University. I honestly have no idea what that guy does other than put on a bow tie and walk around social events. Okay, and maybe that's just my lack of knowledge of what the politics look like in colleges. But I mean, did you ever see that guy doing anything but walking around? Or maybe that's the job. Maybe that's the job.
Yeah.
That guy would just go out on weekends and shake hands. Like
Yeah, I'll
that's
be honest. At that point, that probably is the only job he's got. Just go out and make sure the university looks good. He's got a
yeah.
presence in the community. But
Right.
he was a nice guy. I met him a couple times. But yeah,
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, as a whole, bouncing was a lot of fun, and it is. Everyone thinks you just go in. Like people I talk to now thinks it's crazy. I bounced at one point in time,
Right.
but
Oh yeah.
because everyone thinks you go in and just get fights and get in fights all day long. But I learned very early on, working with a lot of guys, that the best bouncers were guys that typically weren't getting in fights. You really learned
Oh.
how to de-escalate
Mhm.
situations very quickly by talking. I mean, I was a decent sized guy back then, but definitely not the biggest. I worked with bigger guys, but I felt pretty confident that I could de-escalate many situations. But as far as famous people go, off the top of my head, no. So at Lux, we always had the WVU football team come in, and that was a lot of fun at the time. So a lot of good or big players at the time would come in on Saturday nights, have a good time. Friday nights, not during the season, but especially after they won a game, and it would get crazy with people coming in, the team coming in after they won. So that was pretty fun, and honestly, I learned a lot, had a lot of good experiences. I would never do it again. I mean, we could talk about stories all day, but I would never go back and bounce again. You couldn't pay me enough money.
I think you're spot on with I would not trade some of the experiences I had for anything, but I would never look to go get those experiences again or get more.
Yep.
I think I cashed in, I took what I had, and I called it. If only I could figure out how to do that with gambling, I think I'd be all right. But
Yeah,
um,
sounds good. Hey,
but as far yeah,
one thing
go
I
ahead.
want to kind of mention real quick is I know back in the day, yeah, you worked at a couple bars, so we talked a lot about like Bent's and Lux today, and kind of some of those, I guess, busier, a lot more issues type of bars we used to work at. But you spent some time at main stages too, as well, didn't you? When it was more of like a music venue.
Oh, absolutely. So, main stage, which was Chicken Wing prior, actually to us arriving, I think by a couple years, but turned into main stage, which actually ended up closing down because I think there were two owners, and I believe one of them got arrested. But nonetheless, it was a great little music venue. So I did have a couple cool opportunities to kind of meet some people. One thing I will say before we get into main stage, I just remembered that I worked a private party or private table for Jack Harlow. I helped his security because we kind
Okay.
of set up in Bent Willie's. We set up like his own little because we had VIP tables, but we set up like a whole area for him. And I worked the security for that, so he was a cool one. That was probably about 5 years ago, so
Yeah.
not as big as he is now, but still cool. But yeah, main stage was really cool. I got along with the owner really well. He was a really nice person to me. And so I talked to, he would, main stage was right across the street from Bent Willie's. So he would close up a show 2:30. He would come over, say hi, and then head out. So I was able to befriend him, and then not too long after, he started calling me, asking me if I wanted a couple gigs here and there. So off the top of my head, I think the biggest one, maybe not biggest, but my favorite was Pauly D. I worked his personal security when he came out to main stage, and that was a lot of fun. Pauly D, that guy's electric. I am one of those losers who love Jersey Shore. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not saying that it's good content or anything, but to sit there and watch some of these guys just walk around and act the way that they do
Yeah.
was very comedic to me. So I like Jersey Shore. So I actually had reached out to him because I wanted to go to the concert, and he said, "How about you just work at the concert?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Sure, why not?" And he ended up putting me right next to Paulie. Cool guy. He was a good one. The other one that I did was Jimmy Eat World. And funny story about Jimmy Eat World, I got a call from the owner, and he said, "Hey, I have a band coming in. Here's who they are. Do you mind working stage security for me tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Like, why not? More work, the better." So I went out there and I worked stage security, and it was for this band called Jimmy Eat World. And I totally thought it was like a local, just a local regular um, band. Like I had
Yep.
no idea. And so I go to this concert, and it's packed. I mean, we sold out. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, I hear this song, and that song ended up being, and this is sad, I have to actually, I think it's The Middle. It was a couple songs into their playlist, but they played The Middle, and I knew yeah, that's who it was, The Middle, and I knew exactly who they are, and they're huge now. I mean, The Middle on YouTube has 81 million views, so that was pretty crazy. And then through that same owner, I did a concert for Flogging Molly, and I want to bring up Flogging
Ugly
Molly.
Molly.
Yeah, I want to bring up Flogging Molly though. This is an Irish punk band. Certainly, I would say not my cup of tea when it comes out to music. It was good music. Don't get me wrong. Um, Super high energy though, which was sweet. But I've never, and Flogging Molly is another huge band. Another one I had no idea who was before I worked the show. But let me just pull it up here real quick. Flogging Molly, biggest song they have on YouTube, 21 million. So we're not talking about some small band. So I did an outside event right on the water on the Monongalia. How do you say it? Monongalia.
Monongalia.
Yeah, okay. Well, lived there for 5 years. I don't know how to pronounce it. Nonetheless, it was right on the water. It was really cool. But what I thought was great about Flogging Molly, so the concert ended and everyone kind of started creeping up to the stands, which you'll see at concerts. People trying to say hi or whatever. But it was like everyone knew what to do. And these guys finished their concert, put down their instruments, and walked up to the gates and just started talking to people. And so
Really?
it was insane because I'm sitting in between like the crowd and the stage, right? I'm right
Yeah.
in between the two. So they stepped down, and as a worker in that environment, one, I got a little worried. I was like, what the hell is going to happen? Anytime, fans are reaching over to say hi to, who they're cheering for can get a little crazy at times.
Yeah.
Um, But no, these guys, they came out, they talked to people. They actually, once it started to die down, now this was a huge concert, so I don't want to say everyone came up, but there were a lot of people that were talking with Flogging Molly. And then once those people kind of, I mean, I sat down and I talked to them for probably 10, 15 minutes, and
Oh
they were
shit.
just really, and it's cool seeing people as successful, especially in something that is uh, values popularity. Something like music, I think it's very important to be well known to get out there. And I think sometimes what happens is some people get a little snobby when it comes to that. I think everybody kind of agrees with me there. But to see these guys, I mean, they were great. They were really cool people that come and talk to it. Just genuine people who like playing music, and it just turns out that the music was really good and they had a big following. So I would say
Yeah.
those three or four are probably my top ones. And those were all really cool experiences. I'm glad that I was able to work for that. But yeah, Flogging Molly, nice people, I'll tell you.
That's awesome. I'll tell you what, I'm not too much of an Irish punk band guy myself, but my senior year of high school baseball, I actually had I'm shipping up to Boston by Dropkick Murphys is my walkout song, and it was pretty awesome,
Dropkick
man. It
Murphys.
was pretty awesome. It got me pumped up. I was ready to go out and crush some homers.
That's the thing, Irish punk, man. There's not a whole lot of incidents where I want to be listening to Irish punk, but I could totally understand walking up to the batter box, wanting that just playing through the speakers like
Yep,
that.
yep.
And that's pretty cool though that your baseball team had walkout songs. I didn't play baseball. I quit baseball in 8th grade when I was playing second base and ate a line drive to the face.
Ooh,
So I thankfully did not fracture anything, but messed up my face pretty bad and decided that that was the last time I was
that
going to
was it
sport
for
a
you.
glove.
Yep.
But my father and one of my older brothers were big baseball people. My dad actually still coaches to this day, but I don't think they did walkout songs. That's pretty interesting. I like the idea of walkout songs in high school baseball. Did you have any other songs, or was it just that one?
It was just that one for me. That's all I played. No, everyone had their own song. We played it when we went up to bat at every home games. Most of the guys on my team had like country music songs back in the day. But yeah, I just wanted something interesting. I'm Irish myself, so I was like, hey, let's send it. Really get you pumped up. It was pretty cool. I don't know if you've listened to it before, but listen to it after this episode. Check it out. We can drop it in the show notes.
No, absolutely. Yeah, definitely check it out. I'll tell you too, sometimes I definitely wasn't doing it with Irish punk. But sometimes onto those car rides into work, or, you might need a little something to get pumped up. It's a
Yep.
Friday, you had classes, you finished classes, you maybe had a beer or two, saw some people,
Yep.
and then you had to go into work. You needed that quick pump up song in the car to get you going. I think honestly,
100%.
if you were to catch me driving to work, when I was working at Bent Willie's, I'm trying to think what you would have heard on the. I'm trying. Hold on. Give me. I think you probably would have heard some like hardcore Drake. I know I would if it was gonna be a big night, like say it's like Halloween night, or one of the biggest nights of the year, St. Patrick's Day. I might throw on some Eminem. Really get me going.
Yep.
That's what you needed. What you listening to on your way in
No,
away into
I
work.
gotta tell you, the song I listened to on the way to work, and I remember this still to today because every Saturday at Lux, there was a point in time where they started jamming out to a certain song. All right, every week they would play it. And when they played that, I mean, people would like lock arms and start shaking back and forth, but we'd have
It's
fights all the
dangerous.
time. Yeah.
Dangerous.
And that song is "Dreams and Nightmares" by Meek
You're
Mill.
kidding me. I no,
Nope.
I actually, now that you say that, as that song builds up, you're right. I mean, if you're at a
Yep.
club and that song comes out, you're 100% right. I don't know what I was thinking when I said that.
Yep.
No, that's a great club sound. I can imagine, I think, let me think. When I was working at Ben Willie's, I was driving, um, it was a little black Acura.
Okay.
And it had the tinted windows. It's the only, other than the car that I have now, it's the only car that had like fully tinted windows that I've had.
Yep.
And I remember, driving down, bumping some of this rap, trying to get my head ready for work. And you
Yep.
pull up out. I would always do this thing, and this is why I'm a douchebag. Okay, this is why I'm scum of the earth material, and people don't like me. I'll tell you why. Because when I'm driving to work, instead of pulling into the parking lot, I would go around the block and I'd drive in front of Bet Willie's and sit in front of our door and talk to the door guys with my music blasting for about 10 seconds. And then I would pull off into the parking lot.
That's
So if you
hilarious,
can
man.
imagine my dumbass in that little black Acura blasting rap as I'm pulling up downtown Morgantown, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. People looked
Yep,
at me like I was an idiot.
that is funny. You want to know something funny too? My first couple years working down the bar, so my freshman and sophomore year, I actually didn't have a car. So
Really?
yeah,
Wait. I thought you had I thought you had the Tundra and the Jeep.
yes, but I didn't have any there because I didn't
Oh,
have
you
parking.
left it. That
I
makes
didn't
sense.
have
Oh,
parking. Yep,
because you were at Pierpont and you had
yep.
to pay. Dude, that Pierpont apartment. I'll tell you. It sucks that they wouldn't give you free parking, but we had our fair share of fun times out there at Pierpont, huh?
Oh man, we had a great time. I still remember this day, partying in my tiny little apartment. And I mean, I tell you what, that apartment, no joke, is probably, and I don't live in a big apartment now by any means, but that was probably the size of the room that I'm currently in. I mean, that thing was tiny. But I remember, I mean, about every weekend, we would have people over all the time, just partying. So that was the year that basically I had a roommate move out. Halfway through the year, my other roommate was living with his girlfriend, and Austin McVeigh hated his roommates. So at that point in time, he actually just moved in with me. Didn't pay any rent, and it
Yep.
was just him and I just hanging out in this Pierpont apartment. And what was fun about it was like right across the street from like the freshman dorms, like right in Evansdale, you had McDonald's and everything. And I mean, we just had a blast. We'd throw these big parties. We'd probably have like 30 people in this tiny little apartment just having a good time. Like I remember St. Patty's Day. I
Yep.
remember there's a couple different holidays in there that we end up just having people over.
Game days,
Yeah,
because that's
game
the other
days.
thing. That's the thing about Pierpont too, is it was probably what 5-10 minute walk to the stadium.
Oh yeah, 5 minutes tops. You could walk over the stadium. So especially when it got cold out, instead of having to tailgate outside or having to walk around, because back then, like we couldn't even legally drink, so we would have to go find someone's tailgate that had beer. We couldn't carry it
Yep.
around stuff. No, we were just gonna have a tailgate in my apartment. And what was
Hey,
crazy too is it still reminded you kind of like a college dorm. So like there were multiple different people in that apartment complex that were just like partying and drinking all the time. Like it was a good time. I remember you spent some time over there, didn't you?
I did. I definitely. It's to backtrack just a sec. I think it's interesting to talk about Pierpont itself as a building because what Pierpont was actually a dorm. So you had so people who don't know how West Virginia University is structured, it's actually broken into three different campuses. There's downtown, there's health sciences, and then there's Evansdale. And Evansdale was where a majority of the freshman housing was, but it's also where all the sports stuff is. It's right by the basketball stadium, the football stadium, the tennis track, all that stuff, right? So, but nonetheless, so you had the dorm. So previously we had mentioned Wes lived in a dorm in towers. So the
Yep.
freshman doors, the majority of the people live in what they call as towers, and it's four 13 floor dorm rooms,
Yeah,
something like
13th
that.
floor, I think.
Big
Yep.
old, big old. They call it towers for a reason. And then across the street from towers was I'm blanking on the name. Where did I live?
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Yes,
Yep.
thank you. Lincoln, which was a newer building um, and actually, the reason I was able to get in Lincoln because it was really nice, and it was hard to get into is like one of those first request plays was with because of my disability stuff.
Yep.
I quote unquote needed a room that didn't require an elevator, and
Yep.
so all the rooms in towers require elevators. So in that instance, they let me stay at Lincoln, but behind Lincoln, you had a road and then you had the BFS, which is just, the gas station or, convenience store. And then
Yep.
behind BFS was Pierpont. So Pierpont was actually almost a part of Evansdale and at one point was a dorm, if I remember
It
correctly.
was.
So
Yep. That's correct.
so when the university had sold Pierpont and this apartment complex had bought it, I mean, imagine just combining 2 dorm rooms, and that's what these apartments were. So they were, I mean, these were not big apartments. So you think about 30, 40 people piling into some of these apartments, especially on like a game day or a late Saturday night. It got pretty crazy. And you're definitely right to the point where we knew several people living in Pierpont. So it was like a dorm because, we could do our thing and we could open the door and go 3 doors down, knock, and then there was a whole nother group doing their thing, and we would try to combine them and work it out. Although I do recall the staff not being huge fans of us.
So we were good. We didn't have any issues till one night. Austin decides to jump through our beer pong table. So we just have this little, those little plastic like folding tables that fold in the middle, and you can like swing them out. Austin got the bright idea to jump through that one night, and then turned around and proceeded to throw it out the screen window. So he busted the screen straight out our window, threw it out in the ground, and then we just left it there. So come in the next day, Pierpont finds this table, the screen busted out. We're all still asleep at this point. And after that point, I mean, it just felt like we were on a watch list.
This guy, he threw it out the window?
Yes. Basically broke it in half, grabbed it, launched it straight out the window with the screen still in the window. Basically busted it completely out and just left both of them laying on the ground. The screen and the door.
I love that. And the table. I absolutely love that. That is exactly what took part. And God, I mean, the people who owned that apartment had to know what they were getting themselves into. Yeah. But, God bless them, because I'm sure we weren't the only ones. But throwing a table out the window, that kind of that brings up this picture you sent me before we started up the recording and everything. You want to tell people what I'm looking at? And I'm just curious, because you're kind of the I don't know, producer, so to speak. Is there a way we can I guess we can put it on our Twitter. This would be a good picture to put on our Twitter or something like that. Is there a way? Yeah, I guess I answered my own question. Twitter's the best way probably to show this picture. But yeah, tell people what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop this on our Twitter that we do have. We need to talk about that in the end of the show. Mm-hmm. And basically, I don't know what is going on here. So this is at Pierpont, and I remember we kind of talked about like the dorm feel of just going and checking out someone else's apartment complex in this building. But what's going on is I see Jack standing out the window. His head's actually peeking out. He's peeing out the window, and I don't even know what floor we're on right now.
Oh, I remember this. We were at least 8 floors up.
Okay.
At the very, like, we were high up.
Yep. But I'm being a stereotypical dad. All right. So I got my cargo shorts on. I didn't get the memo that those weren't cool.
Gotta love the cargo. Come on, man. This was what? This must have been 2015. No, 2016, 2017. You had to have ditched the cargo shorts by then. Come on.
But I'm still rocking the cargo shorts, and I have a beer in one hand. I'm holding, I believe, Jack's belt. At least I hope his belt in my other hand.
Buddy,
make sure that
hold on. Look, I really hope you guys take the time to go look at this picture, because I want you to know he's trying to get out of this one a little bit. You can see my pants. I clearly am not wearing a belt, and right above my pants you can see my boxers. So I'll let you guys see what he's holding on to, but he's not holding on to my belt. He's trying to make it.
All right. Anyway, so I'm grabbing a hold of Jack's boxers, apparently, making sure he doesn't fall out the window.
Wait, hold on. Actually, hold on.
Beer in one hand, boxer in the other hand. All right, go ahead.
I just realized I think I incriminated us too much. Okay, I think that made it sound like you might have been holding something out. So he's holding, I believe it's my undershirt that's sticking out.
Yeah. I don't think it was your boxers. I don't think it would go that far.
Holding the beer, everything. Go ahead.
I'm making sure, just being my typical dad self, making sure Jack doesn't fall out this window while he pees. I can only assume that someone's taking a massive dump in the bathroom, or who knows what was going on back then. But anyway, Jack had to pee. We held him out the window, and I think Amber is standing behind me, apparently also concerned that you're about to fall out the window. I'm pretty sure that's her.
I'm trying to figure out what she's doing, or who, if that is her. What are they pointing? What are they doing?
I don't know. Yeah. But over on the couch, we got.
Oh. Don't disclose names here. All right. I think we're actually going to have to gray out. I was thinking about it. We're going to have to gray out that part of the picture, whether we just crop it out.
Yep. I'll gray that out. We
But
have two people making out on the couch. So I don't really know what's going on here. The whole time Jack's standing on a coffee table. Right, the thing's about to slip out from under him. A little bit of a risky situation. But this guy just explains a lot, I
yeah,
guess.
this is how Pierpont was. And you're right. That is, in hindsight, say we're on, I would say no way we were on anything lower than the sixth floor. Say that's the sixth floor. I'm dunzos. I fall
Yep.
out that window. I
Yep.
am dunzos. So that is really not a good move.
No.
But yeah, we'll definitely have to put that on Twitter. We'll definitely
Yep.
have to get some people looking at that. But man, we had some good nights both in Pierpont and the rest of and all of Morgantown. That's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a good time. There, I was thinking about, we talked about bars, kind of just having a good time. One night that I specifically remember, do you remember the night that we were with our friend Austin again, McVeigh?
Yeah.
And one of our other friends came up to us. Yeah, you want to tell the story? I think you're around when we almost got in a fight
Which
with
one?
the quarterback from WVU.
Oh, oh. Yeah, okay. All
I
right.
think you can tell better than me, so I'd like to turn
This
it
is a
over
good
to
one.
you.
So Austin, this one heavily involves Austin. We mentioned him, I believe it was in the pilot episode. Great friend of ours, lived with us, lived with Wes for a little bit longer than us. Or well, no, because I guess I ended up moving in with Austin for a year. No,
Yeah, yeah.
anyways, good friends. It was me, Wes, and Austin. We kind of paraded around town. And I remember Wes or Austin had a really good friend. And she dated Skylar Howard.
Yep.
And I remember we were all at Annex. I think it was, it must have been a Saturday night. Now that, because it had
Yeah,
to have been
it
after a
100%
game.
would have been a Saturday. Yep.
So I don't know why we were at Annex on a Saturday night. We were freshman or sophomore,
I
one of
think
the
we
two.
were sophomores then.
Okay. Still not too sure why we're at Annex on a Saturday night, but actually I know exactly why we were at Annex on a Saturday night. But anyways, so we're all having a good time, and Austin's friend shows up, and she is visibly not happy. In fact, I believe she was crying. And so Austin stops, which then lets us stop what we're doing. We all go in a corner, and essentially, I don't know exactly what happened, but Skylar had hurt her feelings, right? Well,
Yep.
here we are, however old we are, but definitely young and idiots. And, after a night out of the town, because this was starting to get into the later parts of the night that when all this occurs. And we decide that we are going to go out because we got wind that Skylar Howard, was out in downtown Morgantown. Right. And so, being, the big, strong men that we were, standing up for this girl who was so visibly upset, we decided to tour around downtown and find Skylar Howard because we were going to beat the shit out of him. And the part that I remember most of this night was we stormed around Annex for a little. We stormed around downtown. We tried to get into Joe's and we couldn't. We went to Bent's. We got into Bent's. And we literally ran in circles for probably half an hour.
Yep.
And we were so angry. And I don't think either you or myself knew exactly what was happening. We just knew Skylar pissed her off and we were going to fuck up Skylar. So we were, I'm talking, our chests were leaning forward. Like that's how fast we were walking to find this guy. We ran around Bent's for a while. We went back to Joe's to try to get in again because we heard that's where Skylar had gone. And we tried to get into Joe's again and got denied. And I think that was the point we said, okay, I guess we shouldn't. Yeah, we shouldn't keep trying to beat up Skylar Howard. So we ended up calling it a night. But speaking of Skylar Howard, man, dude, that was a wreck, and that kind of goes along with West Virginia quarterbacks. But what were you saying? Sorry,
I was about to say, what were we going to do if we found him?
That's
my question.
I don't think that was ever discussed. It was like, she showed up. She talked to Austin. Austin came to us, said, hey, this is kind of what's going on. And we said, wow, Skylar's a bad person. Let's go beat the shit out of him. That was it, right? It wasn't like we thought, okay, let's go find Skylar and make sure, I don't know, talk to him, make sure, whatever. We were just, all we had thought about was finding Skylar Howard with the intentions of beating him up. And I can tell you for a fact, in that position, me, myself, uh, you, and Austin, and forgive me my grammar because I know that's awful, but would have ended up in the hospital that
Oh,
night
100%.
without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
We would have ended up in the hospital. It would not have been good
Yeah.
because not only would Skylar Howard probably personally beat the shit out of us, but then we would have 5 linemen,
Yep.
the other 5 backup linemen, the run, the whole team would be out. We'd have heads for us.
We didn't
So
plan that one through very well.
no, not at all. And at the end of the day, in hindsight, once again, I'm glad we did not find Skylar Howard that night.
I agree. I agree. Hey, so you know what, man? We kind of touched on sports a little bit, WVU football. You want to jump into some sports the past couple of weeks and kind of
Yeah.
just talk through what's been going on?
Yeah, let me just start off real quick. West Virginia football, looking not good.
Nah, no.
We when we were there, Dana was head coach, right? Dana Holgerson. He went on to Houston.
Yes, he went to Houston.
That guy was a prick. Get just to bounce back and say that guy was a prick. Dana Holgerson was the guy that you would be excited to see because he's the head coach of your college football team. And so
Yep.
if you were walking by him, you'd be like, "Oh, Dana!" And the guy wouldn't give you the time of day. He wouldn't even look at you. Like that's what Dana was. So I was happy to see Dana leave. We bring in
Neil Brown.
Neil Brown, thank you, who's, kind of a smaller guy, not as well known. The whole thing, he's going to come build his program. He comes in. He's what, 3 years in now?
Yep, 3 years in. This is third year.
Yeah, and I don't really see a program shaping. And I
I don't either. And I was going to ask your opinion on that, but it sounds like you're ready to roll and you're kind of on the same page with me. But I think everyone has high hopes. And one thing I'll say about this with West Virginia fans, and this has come from someone that kind of grew up not really rooting for West Virginia, even though living in West Virginia. It's just the fan base and the college. I feel like we hang on to coaches way too long. I really
yeah.
do. And there's
Oh,
nothing
absolutely.
there's nothing wrong with it. I think Neil Brown is a great guy. Like, I mean, it seems like he's doing awesome things for the community, and kind of giving back to the university. But I mean, this is his third, what I consider very unsuccessful season. And there's not even talks about him moving on. I'm just thinking from the Ohio State perspective, and obviously we expect a little bit more out of a program. There's no way a coach would have made it this long.
No.
And I just wonder, when do we have to move on? And what really bothers me the most is I get that talent were not there. So Holgerson had a terrible recruiting classes his last couple years. The talent is not there at all. But that's not what bothers me the most. Like, if you look back at that Texas Tech game and that last sequence of a couple minutes of football, that wasn't talent. I mean, that was the team not being prepared. And that is what truly worries me the most, because I'm not hearing any crazy talent coming in to change the talent situation. So we got to be prepared. And I'm just not seeing that out of Neil Brown.
No, I agree fully. Like you said, he's in his third year, and that's when theoretically, I think, first year I don't think you can. And in college football and in pro football, it's very different. But college football, your first year as head coach, I don't think anybody can really expect to see you do anything, right? So chalk that season. Second season, you could argue bleeds. The first season bleeds into the second season. You're still working with players you didn't recruit. You didn't bring in. You're just working with what you had. The third year, that's when you're beginning to start. You've been with this group of guys, for a couple of years now. You've brought in some of your own people. You're recruiting the people you want to. You have your offense, the defense, which you want schemed out, and it's still not working. And I would say, I want to step back here because I think we actually did pick up like a great quarterback. I think we got like a 4-star recruit quarterback. I could be wrong about that, and I don't think it's Dahey who is their starting quarterback. Well, and that's what I'm getting at. My biggest issue, right, is there's no way. So if you're Neil Brown, you come into this job, you're looking to be a program, head coach. You're looking to be there for years. Your third year in their program, you cannot have a dual quarterback system.
No,
Like
I agree.
that is something you do your first year there when you're like, shit, these are the players I have to work with. Let's make out and let's try to win football games. 3 years down the line, I mean, it's different when you have a situation where you have in Oklahoma where you have Spencer Radler, who is now who was the highest ranked quarterback coming into the season. And then now, he's had some bad games, and, now Oklahoma is kind of working both quarterbacks. But Skylar Spencer Rattler, he's a great quarterback. We don't have that. Day he isn't that guy. West Virginia football is in trouble.
Yeah.
I was expecting a lot more to see how our offense has been laid out, and the play calling, and like I said, the whole dual quarterback thing. It's not what I like to see. It's not what I want to see. I'm very worried about West Virginia football, because I think Neil Brown is out the window at the end of this year, if not then the end of next year. And then, we're kind of stuck in the place that we were 4 years ago when Dana Holgerson left. Because another thing about Dana Holgerson, as much as I didn't like the guy and he was a prick and everything, and yeah, fuck you, Dana. I hope you hear this. But uh the guy, he won some football games.
He did.
At no, there were a couple years we were ranked. We were a pretty good football team, and so to kind of step away from that with Neil Brown and see what we've been dealing with, and the other part that's a big concerning, because I don't want to touch on West Virginia football too much, and I'll leave you on this, is that we're about to see a whole reclassing of the conferences. We're
Yeah.
about to lose Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12. And so we're kind of in this position where, either we have the opportunity to really put the Big 12 on our back, as, speaking about West Virginia, we could really be a leaders in football and basketball when it comes to the Big 12. But also, it's a shame, because I think if we were in a better position right now, who knows, maybe West Virginia starts talking about going into the SEC, or, maybe a different conference. But in the position that we are, I don't really think there are too many conferences other than our basketball appeal that, are really saying, hey, let's bring in West Virginia,
Dude, I 100% agree. And honestly, we could go off on a whole episode on this subject. But to be honest with you, I see the conference shakeup really hurting West Virginia to a point that I don't think we will end up in a Power Five, or will be a Power Four conference if it goes that route. I mean, why would we be?
Right.
So I am very, very concerned on what that might look like. Now, obviously, it's still pretty early, and we don't know how those things are going to shape out. The Big 12 might stick around, but we could go a whole episode talking through that, man.
Yeah, and I think eventually we will.
Yep.
But yeah, let's definitely save that for another day. So let's bounce back. I don't want to go. I know we missed last week. I don't really want to touch too much on the games 2 weeks ago. But last week in the NFL, after shitting on the man himself, he finally pulled out a win. What do you think about the Jags?
Yeah, so I actually didn't watch this game. Just kind of watched some highlights of the
Mhm.
game afterwards. To be honest with you, they played the Dolphins. I think these are at least in my opinion, these are the two worst teams in the NFL currently, or close to it. You might throw
Uh,
Houston down in there
yeah, I
with
was gonna
them.
say,
Like
but yeah.
Houston might be down there, but like if you look at like even Lions at 0-6, I think is a better football team than all three of those guys. So I'm not gonna look too much into it. I didn't see anything. Just quickly looking through some of the stats and some of the highlights of the game that really impressed me that much. It was in London, so maybe Urban Meyer just wants to stay over there because he doesn't have to worry about his wife as much. I
Right,
don't know. Maybe he's
that's
a
what
little
it
more
is.
excited.
Dude, you're on to dude, this man flew to London. It was like, nope, wife is staying home. I'm having a hell of a weekend, and he did just that, huh?
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not thinking too much into it right now. I'm still not impressed. I stand by kind of like what I said. I don't know how long Urban Meyer will be there. So
Yeah, I think
not
you're
too
right.
much there, to be honest with you. Um, I don't. Our teams have had a rough couple weeks, so I don't
Oh,
know if there's much to touch on there other than
yeah.
just the Browns. Man, it's looking rough. I
It
think,
it sucks. I
yeah,
want to take over for you, because I'll let you give your whole Brown spiel, because I know you're the fan here.
yeah,
But it sucks, man. I was excited for the Browns because they're so bad for so long. They spent the past probably 3 years, 4 years really putting something together. You start out the season. I even mentioned it in some of the earlier episodes. I thought they were potentially a team to compete.
yeah,
And now you have Kareem Hunt on injured reserve. You have why am I? Nick
Nick,
Chubb is
yep.
out, and then you had mentioned right before we started talking today that you said Baker's out.
Yep. So Brown's head coach announced today that he'll be out Thursday against the game. Case Keenum will get the start.
Oof,
So
yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you what. Put your money on Denver, boys,
yeah,
because
I agree. It's
um,
it's been a rough go of things, and I'm with you. Like I still genuinely think we're a good team. Um, I mean, we lost Kansas City, we lost Los Angeles, and we lost Arizona. I mean, those are some of the best teams in football right now, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, with that, I think it's getting a little more and more demoralizing to the team. We're getting injuries starting to pop up. I'm starting to get concerned about the rest of the season. I really am, especially
yeah.
Baltimore's looking good. We got to play them twice. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, no matter whether, even if we are the better team, they're going to play us tight. And then we're sitting here looking at Green Bay. Um, Green Bay, we do have Detroit on the schedule, Las Vegas. Those are all games we pick up. But I just don't see a whole lot of opportunities to win here. We really need to snag a win against one of these top tier teams early to start our season.
Right, because
But
I mean, the first battle is just getting in the playoffs. It's one thing
exactly.
to be successful in the playoffs, but you lose people like Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and Baker. I mean, it's a tough road to get to the playoffs. Even if they're, I think Kareem Hunt's out for, at least he's on injured reserve. So what is that? At least 3 weeks,
Yeah,
potentially
minimum of
more.
3. Yep.
And so he's out. Nick Chubb, I think, is out for
He's
tomorrow, but
out
it's
tomorrow. Yep.
yep, but I think they're leaning towards him coming back after a long break the following Sunday. And then hopefully nothing's too messed up with Baker. But I think you're right, man. It's definitely some woes going on in Cleveland. And I do apologize that that's what you deal with. But
Yeah.
as at least for you, you get to talk to somebody who's nonetheless a Washington football team fan. So I had the great privilege of watching us get dominated by the Chiefs, which honestly, first half, it was a pretty good game, but obviously the Chiefs got carried away with that. And I expect the same exact thing to come this week with Green Bay. I think Green Bay will run all over us. I'm not excited. I will still be cheering for them, but it's not going to be my most fun NFL Sunday, which we'll get into why I said it like that here in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep us moving though real quick. You want to touch on baseball real quick? I know you're a big MLB guy.
Actually, I do, but I want to bounce back here for a second. Did you watch the Titans Bills game?
I did not watch the whole game, no, because
Okay,
it was on what,
yeah,
Monday night or
yeah, it was a late
yeah.
night. So I'll just fill you in. It you probably saw the instant replays or whatever. But the Bills were down by one, I believe. Um, fourth and inches on the Titans, probably 6 yard line, something like that.
Yep.
And with
Um
like 2 minutes left, right?
yep.
And they decide to opt out of the field goal
Yep.
on fourth down to try to go for it. Potentially, then to score a touchdown, but more importantly, taking away time on the clock because that at that point I think the Titans were going to be out of timeouts. So then you can really just kneel it, and if you want to from the 5 yard line, you could kneel it a couple times, kick a field goal with 1 second left to win the game. So I get what the Bills were doing, but I wanted to touch on this because I had another conversation with someone, and I was just curious. It's a little different, I guess, but what are your thoughts? Are you're offensive coordinator of the Bills, arguably the best team in the NFL. You're playing a team like the Titans, who we kind of gave a bad run a couple weeks ago. I think you
Yep.
talked about them a little more positively than me. But yeah, the Bills. I mean, the Titans. We had some concerns about to come out and beat the Bills. But if you're in the Bills' position, there, it's fourth and inches, right? You have a guy like Josh Allen, uh, who you can potentially, essentially, secure your fate with a first down. Do you go for it like they did? You take that field goal. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm kicking the field goal. I'm playing a conservative. I don't see a real reason to go for that first down. I mean, yeah, it wins you the game, but I'm just going to live to fight another day. And like you were saying, this is the best team in football, one of the best teams in football. So I don't know why you wouldn't kick the field goal, tie it up, and then go into overtime. The only thing that I will mention is it seemed like Tennessee had the momentum in the fourth quarter, so I guess I could see that. Like you're trying to,
Yeah,
I'm saying, okay, I don't want to go into overtime against these guys, but still, it to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard choice, right? But I'm gonna defend the Bills here, and this is why. Well, first off, I have no doubt in my mind the Bills make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I
So
agree.
the Bills will make the playoffs. I don't think. I mean, obviously, any team goes out on Sunday and wants to win. So I'm not saying they, but to lose this game does not put a damper in their season, so to speak, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. But to be the Bills in that situation, the reason that I put together for them going for it on that fourth down was that they're the Bills. You're in an
Yeah,
NFL where you have the teams, you have the Chiefs, who, sure, people argue are having an off year, but have essentially dominated the NFL for the most part the last couple of years. You have the Cardinals that are coming up. You have some really good teams. And so I think there's a lot of conversations that say, hey, the Bills could be the best team, but I don't think there's as many conversations that say Bills are the best team. I think there's a lot, but
yeah,
I think it's less. And so I think what the Bills were doing is I think that they were taking that as an opportunity to say, hey, here we are, we're the Bills. We don't care. We're going to go for it. We're going to win this game because we're the best team in the NFL. And that's kind of what I took it as. Obviously, it didn't work out for them, and the Titans ended up sealing the deal. And I lied. They could have tied the game. That's what it was. They
yeah.
were
Good.
down by
I did that.
3. Now that I'm looking at it, but nonetheless, like, I don't think the Bills wanted to go into overtime with the Titans, not only because the Titans had momentum that game and in that fourth quarter, but also because they're the Bills.
Yeah,
They are the high standard, and I think they did their best to set that standard. And unfortunately for them, this didn't work out. And honestly, if you look at the play where Josh Allen, they run a QB sneak, which probably most teams would do. It kind of looks like he just slips, which is super unfortunate. But just an interesting game I wanted to tag on. But yeah, so let me carry over to baseball. Bouncing back to MLB playoffs, we are having a hell of a playoffs, boys. I'll tell you, if you're betting the over, you're loving yourself.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, right now we have the Braves playing the Dodgers. I have the Braves winning it all. I'm sorry, I have the Dodgers winning it all. Braves are actually up 2-1 in the series and up 4-0 in the game. So hopefully Dodgers swing this around because I do have a future on the Dodgers to win the World Series as well. So, and I love Max Scherzer. I'm a Washington Nationals fan, so I loved Max Scherzer and I loved Trey Turner. So they got traded to the Dodgers midway through the season. So I'd like to see them get another ring. And then the Astros, I hate the fucking Astros. I hate the fucking Astros, and I hate the fucking Astros. So any team, I'm not a particular big fan of the Red Sox, but if there's a team playing against the Astros, I want them to win.
Yeah.
So hopefully that series is now tied, I believe, 2-2.
I
And
have it down
then,
for.
oh, no, I lied. Houston's winning 3-2,
Yeah.
which would be super upsetting. Huge offense. That's the thing about MLB playoffs. You might not be a baseball fan. I know a lot of people don't like watching baseball, but these are very entertaining playoffs. You have some sluggers out there. So, if you're a baseball fan, you're already watching. If you're not a baseball fan, tune into some of these late night games. Don't even watch the whole game, but tune in, seventh, eighth, ninth inning. You're going to see a home run. That's how these playoffs are going. A lot of walk-offs.
Yep.
It's been fun. A lot of home runs. Just wanted to touch on baseball real quick, just because there's been so much coming out of it.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I'm hearing a lot about it. I haven't followed it a whole lot myself, but just been working like crazy, so been keeping me away from watching a whole lot of TV. But hey, that's all right. So one thing I want to jump into next, because you've gotten me into it, and I truly love it, and it's super interesting to me, is Formula One, man. So
Oh,
just to give everyone a little bit of backstory. So like I said, we started this podcast a couple weeks ago now, and leading up to that, Jack and I were talking quite a bit every day, and one thing that he kept mentioning was Formula One. So how much he enjoyed it. He started playing the game on the PC and just kind of following it this season. And he got me into it, got me inspired. So the Turkish Grand Prix was 2 Saturdays ago now. So not
Sunday.
this past Saturday or
Sunday.
Sundays. Yep. 2 Sundays ago now. So not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. And Jack and I woke up at 7:30. We hopped on Discord and started streaming the race. and just watching it. And man, it was a lot of fun. So I followed the whole event through the whole weekend through qualifying. Thought that was super interesting. I do think we should go into details about kind of the sport of F1 at some point. And then watched a really rainy race that following Sunday where we had Lewis Hamilton starting at 15th, I believe.
11th.
11th, and tried to make his way through the field. And there was a lot of challenges for him on a tough track. But I really enjoyed it. So, any takeaways from the Turkish Grand Prix, Jack?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was a good one. Anytime. Hold on, let me take a step back. Wes, how long we been running right now? I just don't want to,
Uh,
because I can go off on a tangent about Formula One because I have truly enjoyed it, but I don't want to go off too much. So I just want to know,
we've been going a while, so let's just keep it
Okay. Okay,
straight.
I'll keep it short. So yeah, 2 weeks. The Turkish Grand Prix was a little rainy. You had Lewis Hamilton, who is one of the greatest F1 racers of all time, best F1 of our generation, and currently, actually, let me rephrase that
He's
statement.
second this season. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was going. I thought he took. Okay, so he's second. He's
Yeah.
second in the driver standings. Mercedes is on top, though, I believe.
Yep.
Um, But yeah, so you have this guy who's essentially dominated the sport the last 10 years. You put him 10 places back because he changed out a part in his engine. So basically, not to go into it too much, but you each car has three engines that it can work with. After they go past that engine, if they swap out a part, they get penalized for it. And you can also get penalized for doing it while you're in qualifying. There's only certain times you can edit it or make changes to the engine or the power
Yep.
supply. And so that's what led into he actually came out in pole position. He had the best time in qualifiers. They penalized him to 10 points or 10 places. So he started out in 11th, paved the way for Bottas, his teammate, and the other Mercedes driver to kind of, make his way around the track pretty easily. You had Verstappen behind him. But it was nothing too crazy happened. I don't remember any there weren't any big crashes, anything like that. Just kind of a wet, rainy day, and it was pretty. What do you say? Procedural, procedure. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
think the cool thing that really stood out to me that I enjoyed is I think we were talking the day of the race, really understanding the whole process of the race weekend really makes Formula One a whole lot more entertaining. So, kind of understanding qualifying and then looking at like, okay, Lewis Hamilton decided to change his motor was better for his team, but even though it put him back, different things like that. But the actual race itself, I mean, the one thing that stuck out to me was just the tire selection. So, they went with an all-weather type style of tire, but the track was just dry enough that when it slicked off, like it was running pretty well. And a lot
mhm.
of these guys attempted to go the whole way, or took the bet on trying to go the whole race. That didn't end up panning out for them. The whole race on a single tire. So those that switched tires about halfway through to
No,
the
they would have
same
they
tire.
would have made at least one stop. I don't know because
Well,
I think
they're waiting for the track to dry out, see if they
yeah,
put on some
yeah, that
slicks. Yeah.
yep. Because I
Um,
think and sorry to interrupt, just once again, there's so many things that go into F1 that makes it interesting. But as Wesley brought up, tires are a big part of the strategic mindset of F1 because there are different tires that are set to do different things. And throughout a race, you have one, two, three pit stops. And basically, you you kind of maneuver. So there's soft, there's mediums, there's hards, there's intermediates, there's super soft, stuff like that. And you try to dictate, the hards go for longer distance but have less traction. The mediums go for less distance, stuff like that. And when rain gets put into the equation, you have two other sets of tires. So you have intermediates, and that's it rained. The track is still a little wet, but it's not continuing to rain. And then you have your wet tires, and that's for the track is wet. It's still raining. And you got to get as much grip as you can. And so all these different tires make the strategic setup of F1. So you're right. So you have this race where you have people come out in their intermediate tires, and it rained earlier in the day. So it's not so much raining anymore. So that track, as cars are going around, it's getting drier and drier just from the heat of the tires and everything. So, you have these, and the thing about the slicks and the intermediates is that they're super. They really grasp the road, the circuit when it's wet. I don't really know any of the science behind it, but when it's dry, it's not successful. Right.
Yeah.
So you run into this thing where you have these guys and they all come out on these intermediate tires, and then everyone's trying to win the race. So the question is, when is the best time to switch on to, hards or mediums in order to go on a drier track? Like, when's the time where the track's just dry enough to be optimal for those other tires? So that's a really good. I'm glad to hear you bringing up something like that, because that's exactly the things that you should be, kind of picking up on as you watch F1 races. So for that being, I essentially probably your first F1 race that you really sat down and watched. That's a
Yep.
cool thing to kind of bring up, and I'm glad that you kind of caught on to that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. So I'm personally looking. We got this Sunday. We're going to be in Austin, Texas. Formula One will be with United States Grand Prix. So I'm pretty pumped up for this. I'm going to continue to follow the race weekend. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited, and I want to see this battle for the number one driver spot kind of heat up. So
Yeah. So
uh,
two things real quick. I know I keep cutting you off, and I'm sorry, and I don't mean to keep prolonging things. But two things. First one, United States Grand Prix is this Sunday. Okay. The thing about Formula One and why I think I have difficulty getting, friends and people I know to kind of watch it is because it's all over Europe, all over the world actually. And so yeah, a lot of your races occur at like 6, 7, 8, 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Not the time where you want to get up. Like Wes mentioned, we got up at 7:30, hopped on Discord and watched this race. So it's not an optimal time to be on TV. But the United States Grand Prix is this Sunday at 3 p.m. Okay,
yeah,
so you can sit there, watch your football, and switch back and forth to the United States Grand Prix. I'm telling you, you're gonna like it. Formula One is really cool, and so I think this Sunday is a great opportunity to watch it. I will be watching it. Hopefully, Wes will be watching it, and I think anybody who's listening should be watching it. But the other thing, like he mentioned, we have a huge championship battle going right now. We talked about it in one of the earlier episodes, but each race you get certain points the higher that you finish the race in for. And so we have this guy, Lewis Hamilton, who is, one of the greatest racers of all time, best of the generation, now battling the new guy who is Max Verstappen, who is turning out to be what looks like could be the next, he's the next era. He's the next Lewis Hamilton. So if there's ever a good time to get into Formula One, now's that time, because not every year do you get battles like we have this year. And next year it will be really interesting because they're doing a whole new build for the car. So you're actually going to see a bit of a shakeup in where teams are performing, because you're going to have these new cars running on the tracks.
yeah.
So to get into it, the end of the season this year, watch some of these races, watch how fast these guys go and how hard they battle for this top spot, and then carry that over into the up and coming season, which should be essentially untold. Who knows what's going to happen with some of these new cars. So I'm sorry, I apologize for going out on a big tangent here, but yeah, I just think I just think everyone should watch Formula One. I love Formula One. Great stuff.
Yep. All good, man. So let's go ahead and wrap up. So we had our first picks of the week on our
Sure.
last episode. So my pick hit. So I picked shoot, I'm drawing a blank now. I picked the Rams over the
Yep.
Seahawks when yep, so that was when Russell broke his finger or dislocated his finger, whatever he did. And I believe you pushed, correct?
Well, no. So
Okay.
I actually got some backlash about this. Okay,
All
I
right.
had some angry texts because I said we made this pick on Wednesday night 2 weeks ago. Right, game was
Yep.
Thursday night, or sorry, Sunday. Right, when I took my pick, I took it at Green Bay -2.5. All right, I
Okay.
locked it in. Listen to the podcast. That's what I fucking said. All right, the line then went up to 3 and then actually bounced down to 2 right before the game. Okay. So if you took my advice right when the podcast came out, or you took my advice right before the game started, you were able to win with me. If you took the 3, though, in between those time periods, you did push. But I don't want to hear it because there's a big difference. I don't care what everybody says between 2.5 and 3 points. And I took the 2.5 points, and I was right. So fuck you guys.
All right. Sounds
Sorry.
good. Well, we'll go ahead and kick it off. What's your pick of the week this week?
Okay, I think we have a pretty tough NFL week, to be honest, just because we have some big teams going against, um, some not so successful teams,
Yep.
if that makes sense. Um, man, I to be honest, I really want to go. I think I'm going to hammer down the Broncos tomorrow night.
Okay.
Given no Nick Chubb and no Kareem Hunt and now no Baker, they're sitting at right now -2. The Browns are. So I don't know. I just think I don't know. I think the Broncos pull that one out. They've had a good year and everything of that such. But I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna go and hand my lock off to the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
Okay. They are underdogs this week. No, I'm not taking them at money, but I love Indianapolis against the 49ers at +4.
Yep.
I've actually really enjoyed what I've seen out of Carson Wentz this season. I was a little curious. I actually think he's in a better position right now than he was at the end of his stint with the Eagles. So I like that. And I think the Colts are really putting something together. You have some receivers who aren't as high on the radar, but have really been catching the ball well. And so I think +4 against the Niners. I think the Niners are underperforming. I think they depend too much on the defense. So if you get a team who can control the ball like the Colts, who can take the ball and hand it off and run it down the field, eat some clock away, I think this thing's going to be pretty low scoring. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say Colts to win it. I would say 24-13.
Okay.
But I'm not. I want to be very clear. I'm not taking the Colts money line. I think riding with the +4 is the best value bet.
Yeah. Okay. Solid pick. Yeah, so for mine, I'm going to jump over to the New Orleans Saints. I'm actually going to pick against the Seattle Seahawks again. It worked out for me last game, but I'm kind of with you looking beforehand. I didn't see a whole lot I love this week, but I do see New Orleans at -4.5 against the Seattle Seahawks. So this is at New Orleans, I believe.
No, it's in Seattle actually.
Okay, it's at Seattle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change my mind at all. And the reason I say this is so Saints are coming off a bye week, but their last game was against Washington. I actually think Washington still is a pretty good football team. They're 3-2. Jameis isn't looking bad. Alvin Kamara is looking pretty good as well. Of course, he's a beast. And then if you just look at the Seahawks team, really the big focus for me is in the injury report. I mean, you got Russell Wilson on the IR, you got Chris Carson on the IR, their backup Rashad Penny's on the IR. Like Alex Collins is questionable, and he's been the guy filling in, and he looked terrible when he played last against the Rams. So I love this -4.5 for New Orleans. I think this should be an easy win for them. I think they will for sure win by a touchdown. But I think there's even potential for them to expand that out and win by like 10. So I'm gonna say maybe 27-17.
For sure. I mean, what? No Russ or is Russ? No, yeah, Russ is still out.
Yep.
No
Russ
Chris
is out.
Carson. I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great pick. Eh, yeah, and then so that pretty much wraps us up. Unless I'm missing something, Wes. But I do want to mention one thing just to leave you guys off. One thing that me and Wesley spoke about prior to even our pilot episode, and what we wanted to do with this podcast, and how we were going to kind of shape things. And one thing we really want to do is bring on people, and I just wanted to take a second before we headed off, and I think Wes agrees with me here that I think a lot of people, there's a lot of stories we have and things we can talk about with a wide range of people. And so I think that's going to see something you're going to start seeing, whether that you're looking forward to that or not. But I think we're going to start calling up a few people and get them on here, whether it's for the full podcast or we just talk for, half of it, whatever it may be. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I just wanted to throw it out there in case any of you guys want to get up on here, but also just so you kind of know going in the future, one of the directions we want to head. Obviously, I'm a piece of shit living out in Kentucky, far from anything spectacular. And while Wesley is a genius who works really hard, I wouldn't say that he's famous to any degree. So it's not like we're talking about bringing in big guests or anything. Obviously, everyone knows that we can't get those, but I think it would be fun to kind of bring some people up that have played some big roles in our lives and have some communication with them and let some people hear, maybe someone else talk instead of just us, because by now you've listened to about 3.5 4 hours of us talk, and so if you're still going you might get a little upset.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Hey, you gotta give us more credit. We had 37 listens so far on this
Hey,
podcast. So
oh, 37.
I'll
You
be
hear
honest,
that, guys? You are one of 37. And
37.
I'll tell you, you take that and you put it in a frame and you put it up on your wall. A couple of years from
Yeah,
now, I won't be kicking us so hard because we're gonna be millionaires.
exactly. Yeah. So
Boom. It's that
um,
simple.
I think we're doing all right, man. This is more. We've exceeded my expectations. But yeah, what you're saying, I would love to get some guests on here. Just got
Mhm,
people that we can talk to, man. Whether
mhm.
you had an important part in our lives at some point down the road or in the past, or I mean, maybe we've never met you and you just got a bunch of cool
Yeah,
stories. Like if you were a bouncer
absolutely.
one day and you got some stuff to kick around or really into sports, shoot us a message. We'd love to have you on here. So where you can find us, and I think that's a good segue to where we're going to be at, of course. So if you have listened to us, you've probably heard us on Spotify, if I were to guess. So that's going to be our main source of getting this podcast out, and we're going to that and YouTube, and we're also going to look for a couple other outlets to get it to you guys. But really, look for us on Spotify. If there's somewhere else you'd like to hear us, let us know. We can work that out. And one cool thing I do want to mention, because we don't at our last show we did not have this. We do now. We currently have a Twitter. So if you want to check us out on Twitter, it is Be Back Podcast. So at Be Back Podcast is our handle on there. And we're going to be posting some cool stuff. So we already have something for this week that we want to throw in there with this funny picture back from Pierpont. But then we also want to start giving some snippets of some of our episodes on there just to kind of get us out and get some other listeners in. So if you don't mind, give us a follow, retweet some of our stuff. We'd really appreciate that. And you can find more about our podcast, and you can reach us there as well. So make sure to check that out. You got anything else, Jack?
No, I mean that pretty much, yeah, definitely, get on your Twitters or whatnot, and give us a follow. That's important. But yeah, I think like Wesley said, I think, for example, that picture of us at Pierpont, we'll definitely throw up there. I kind of dropped the ball. I was gonna make a nice urban meme last week, but I didn't get to it. But I think that would be a cool thing to be able to post, especially because, like he said, most of you guys are listening on Spotify. So it's a little harder to get into the show notes and see the pictures. Whereas if it was on Twitter, you might stumble by it and then listen, or you might be listening and then run over to Twitter. So I think that would be really cool. And the other thing, last note I'll leave you on, and then I promise I'll say my goodbyes. The other thing I really want to get involved here, it probably won't be a weekly thing. It might be definitely something I'd probably want to incorporate if we had guests. But get these cams on, baby.
Yep, I
Get our
agree.
cams on, give the face to the people, let them see my fat ass and your no, not so much muscular ass. Uh, and I think that would be a good time. So that wraps it up for me. I'm sorry. I know I was talking a whole lot tonight, but that's kind of the point of this thing. So I guess I shouldn't really apologize. But I appreciate it. It's been fun. And until next week, lock it in. You heard it.
Yep. See you guys.